The transport shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, carrying two very important visitors. Inspector Velfas pressed his scaled face against the window, watching the blue planet grow larger. He was a creche, tall and covered in green reptilian skin. His golden eyes narrowed with curiosity and something else. Judgment, perhaps. "Another human facility to inspect," Velfas said to his companion. His voice carried the hissing accent of his people. "I expect we will find more of their strange habits." Beside him sat Chishra, a Lumaran whose body seemed made of living crystal. Light moved through her transparent form in soft waves. She was reviewing data on her tablet. "The reports say humans maintain old weapons alongside new ones." "Very old weapons? How old?" Velfas asked. "Thousands of years old. In design, at least." Chishra's voice sounded like wind chimes. "They still make gunpowder firearms. Can you imagine?" Velfas laughed, a harsh sound. "Gunpowder! My ancestors used such things 10,000 years ago, before we discovered plasma technology. These humans are truly backward." The shuttle landed on the orbital defense station high above Earth. The station was massive, bristling with weapons and sensors. Captain Do-Yun Park waited at the airlock to greet them. He was a human in his 40s, wearing the dark blue uniform of the Terran Defense Force. His face was calm and professional. "Inspector Velfas." "Officer Chishra, welcome to Defense Station Terra Prime." Do-Yun bowed slightly, a human gesture of respect. "I'm Captain Park. I'll be your guide today." Velfas did not return the bow. Yes. Let us begin. We have many facilities to inspect this month. I want to see your weapon systems." "Of course," Do-Yun said. He showed no reaction to the inspector's rudeness. "Follow me, please." They walked through the station's corridors. The walls were metal, clean, and functional. Crew members passed them, saluting Captain Park. Velfas noticed they all wore sidearms on their belts. Strange blocky things, not the sleek plasma pistols most species carried. "Are those projectile weapons?" Velfas asked, pointing at a soldier's hip. "Yes, Inspector. Standard issue Terran Defense Force pistol. 9mm. 9mm what?" "The diameter of the bullet it fires. A small metal projectile propelled by chemical explosion." Chishra's crystalline form flickered with surprise. "You still use chemical propulsion? In the year 2347? "We do," Do-Yun confirmed. They reached a large door marked Armory 7. "You'll see more inside." The armory doors opened. Velfas and Chishra stopped walking. Their eyes went wide. The room stretched before them like a warehouse. Racks upon racks of weapons lined the walls. But these were not energy weapons. These were guns. Hundreds of them. Rifles, pistols, shotguns, machine guns. All mechanical. All primitive. "What is this?" Velfas demanded. "A museum?" "No, sir. This is an active armory. Every weapon here is maintained and ready for use." "But why?" Chishra moved closer to examine a rifle. "You have plasma weapons. You have particle beams. Why keep these relics?" "Redundancy," Do-Yun said simply. "These weapons don't need power cells. They don't need complex charging systems. They work in any environment. They work when other things don't." Velfas picked up a heavy black rifle. It was cold and solid in his claws. Much heavier than a plasma rifle. "This is so crude." "So simple. Simple is reliable," Do-Yun replied. They continued the tour. Next was a training range. Through the observation window, they could see soldiers practicing. A woman in combat fatigues was instructing a group of young recruits. She held a rifle and demonstrated proper shooting stance. "That's Sergeant Yoonji Kim," Do-Yun explained. "One of our best marksmanship instructors." They watched as Yoonji corrected a recruit's grip. The recruit fired. The sharp crack of gunfire echoed even through the soundproof glass. The target downrange showed a tight grouping of holes. "They're using actual bullets?" Velfas was incredulous. "Not training simulations?" "We use both. But nothing replaces real trigger time with real weapons. Yunji noticed them watching and waved. She handed her rifle to an assistant and came to join them. She was shorter than Do-yun, with sharp eyes and calloused hands. Sergeant Kim, these are inspectors from the Galactic Union, Do-yun introduced them. Welcome, Yunji said. She shook hands with each of them, a firm grip. Velthas found her skin warm, her confidence surprising. Sergeant, can you explain why you still train soldiers with projectile weapons? Chishra asked. Her tone was curious, not mocking like Velthas. Sure, Yunji said. A plasma rifle is great, until the power cell dies, until the temperature drops too low, until electromagnetic interference scrambles the firing mechanism. A bullet doesn't care about any of that. Put powder in the chamber, pull the trigger, physics does the rest. But the Galactic Union hasn't used such weapons in centuries, Velthas protested. We evolved beyond them. Yunji's expression stayed neutral. Respectfully, Inspector, you evolved away from them. We kept both. When you have only one tool, you're limited. We prefer having options. Velthas made a dismissive gesture. It is a waste of resources and training time? Maybe, Yunji said. But every human soldier can fight even if every advanced system fails. Can you say the same? The question hung in the air. Velthas did not answer. The tour continued into the next facility. This one housed missiles. Huge cylindrical weapons and launch tubes. But again, Velthas noticed they were not antimatter warheads or quantum destabilizers. These were chemical rockets. Please tell me these are decommissioned, Velthas said. They're not, Do-yun replied. We maintain a full arsenal of conventional explosive missiles. High explosive, armor-piercing, cluster munitions, everything. This is absurd. Velthas turned to face the captain directly. You are members of the Galactic Union. You have access to the most advanced weapons in known space. Yet you cling to these primitive tools like a child clings to a worn blanket. Do-yun's expression remained calm. Inspector, humanity has been fighting wars for thousands of years. We learned hard lessons. One of those lessons is this. The weapon that works is better than the weapon that's sophisticated, but fails. Your weapons will not fail, Velthas said confidently. Union technology is tested and proven. Proven in what conditions? Do-yun asked. Against what challenges? Technology is wonderful until it's not. Then you need something that works no matter what. Chishra had been quiet, taking notes. Now she spoke. Captain Park, has there ever been a situation where these old weapons proved necessary? Yes, Do-yun said. Several times? Solar flares that disrupted power systems. Hostile environments where energy weapons malfunctioned. Close-quarters combat where simple reliability mattered more than power. Every time, these obsolete weapons saved lives. Later that day, far from the defense station, Dr. Minho Choi sat in an observatory studying solar data. He was a thin man with tired eyes and permanent worry lines on his forehead. The screens before him showed star patterns from across. Multiple systems. Something was wrong. The stellar fluctuations he was tracking had intensified. The pattern suggested something dangerous. Something unprecedented. He composed a report and sent it to the Galactic Science Council. His message was clear. There was a risk of a massive electromagnetic event. A solar storm that could cascade across star systems. The Council's response came quickly. Unlikely. Your models are too conservative. No action required. Minho stared at the dismissal. He looked back at his data. The numbers didn't lie. But nobody wanted to listen. Back on the station, Velthas was preparing his report. He typed with sharp, angry keystrokes. Earth facilities remain obsessed with obsolete weapons technology. Recommend mandatory upgrade to standard Union arsenal. Current human doctrine represents inefficient resource allocation and backwards thinking. Chishra read over his shoulder. Perhaps we should mention their reasoning. What reasoning? Velthas snorted. Fear? Nostalgia? They are simply stubborn. That evening, Velthas encountered Do-yun in the station's observation deck. Earth rotated slowly below them, blue and beautiful. Inspector, Do-Yun said. I hope the inspection was satisfactory. It was revealing, Velfas replied. He stared at the planet. Tell me, Captain, why do you really cling to weapons that are 10,000 years obsolete? Do-Yun stood beside him, hands clasped behind his back. He was quiet for a moment. Then he answered, his voice soft but certain. Because they work when nothing else does. Because humans learn that survival means being ready for anything. Because we never want to face a threat and realize we prepared for the wrong fight. He turned to look at the inspector. We hope we never need them. But if that day comes, we'll be ready. Velfas said nothing. He filed his report that night, confident in his recommendations. The humans were paranoid. They would learn, but in space beyond what their sensors could detect, stellar winds were changing. Deep in the sun's core, forces were building. The storm was coming, and nobody was ready. The first sign came from the star monitoring network. Automated sensors across 7 systems detected unusual magnetic fluctuations. Within minutes, those fluctuations became spikes. Within an hour, they became a catastrophe. Dr. Minho Choi was in his laboratory when the alerts started screaming. His screens lit up with red warnings. The stellar alignment he had warned about was happening. But it was worse than his worst predictions. No, 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 he whispered, typing frantically. He needed to send a warning. He reached for his communicator. The lights went out. Every screen went dark. The gentle hum of electronics died. Emergency lights kicked on, bathing the lab in red. Minho grabbed a backup radio transmitter, the kind that ran on batteries. His hands shook as he tried to broadcast. Static. Just static. Doc in orbit above Earth. Aboard a Galactic Union cruiser, Inspector Velfas was reviewing reports when his cabin went black. Not just dark. Everything stopped. His computer, his lights, his door controls. Even his plasma pistol, which he grabbed from his desk, showed no charge indicator. What is happening? He shouted into the darkness. Treshra's voice came from down the corridor. Inspector, all systems are offline. Velfas tried the manual door release. It worked. He stepped into the hallway where emergency chemical lights were starting to glow. Crew members were panicking. A crash officer ran past, his scales pale with fear. What hit us? Velfas demanded. Unknown, the officer called back. All energy systems are dead. Shields, weapons, propulsion, everything. On the frontier colony world called New Jeju, Governor Sunbok Yoon was in a council meeting when the power grid collapsed. The holographic displays vanished. The lights died. Outside, she could hear shouting. Sunbok was an older woman, gray-haired but strong. She had helped build this colony from nothing. She moved quickly to the emergency cabinet and pulled out a hand-cranked radio. All stations, this is the governor. Report status. Responses came in, crackling and broken. Power out everywhere. Vehicles dead. Communications limited to analog systems. And worse news, the defense grid was completely offline. Governor, her security chief said, bursting into the room. The proximity alarms are going off. The mechanical ones. Sunbok felt cold fear. Which direction? North and east. Multiple contacts. Moving fast. She ran to the window. In the distance, she could see them. Dark shapes moving across the plains. Thousands of them. The void swarm, biomechanical creatures that attack disabled ships and colonies. They could sense electromagnetic dead zones. They came when civilizations were vulnerable. Sound the evacuation alarm, Sunbok ordered. Manual sirens. And get me the armory codes. In space, the solar storm raged invisibly. It was not heat or radiation in the traditional sense. It was a cascade of electromagnetic pulses riding through hyperspace itself. Any system that relied on advanced electronics simply stopped working. Plasma weapons became useless metal. Energy shields flickered out. Even basic computers were fried. The storm had hit 3 star systems simultaneously. Millions of people were suddenly living in the Dark Age again. Captain Do-Yun Park stood on the bridge of his cruiser. The Inchin, watching his crew work by emergency lighting. Most of his systems were dead, but not all. Status report, he ordered calmly. Lieutenant Jiwan Han looked up from her station. She was a young officer with quick hands and a sharp mind. Sir, all primary weapons are offline. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, all dead. Life support is on backup batteries. We have maybe 12 hours. And the ballistic systems? Doyan asked. G1 checked a mechanical gauge. Railguns are operational. Chemical rockets are ready. The mechanical fire control system is functioning. Around the bridge, other officers looked surprised. They had always considered the ballistic weapons as backups. Ancient systems that existed only because regulations required them. Now those ancient systems were all they had. Send a signal to Fleet Command, Doyan said. Use Morse code if necessary. Tell them we're combat capable and moving to assist New Jeju. Sir, New Jeju is under attack, the communications officer reported, reading from a paper printout from an old-style telegraph machine. Void swarm, thousands of contacts. Their defense grid is completely down. Doyan nodded grimly. Then we move now. Helm, use chemical thrusters. Navigation, plot a course using visual references. Weapons, prepare the railguns. Visual navigation? The helmsman looked worried. Sir, without computers, use a sextant, Doyan said. And your eyes. Humanity navigated space before computers. We can do it again. The Inchin moved slowly, pushed by simple chemical rockets. It was like flying a ship from 3 centuries ago. But it moved. That was more than most of the fleet could say. Velfas watched from the observation port of his disabled cruiser as the Inchin passed by. How was it moving? All his ship systems were dead. They were drifting helplessly. But that human ship had power, had propulsion, had weapons, apparently because he could see gun ports opening. How? He whispered. Treshra stood beside him, her crystalline form dimmed without power flowing through her. They're old systems. They don't rely on advanced electronics. Velfas felt something unfamiliar, humility and fear. We are helpless. Yes, Treshra said quietly. We are. The Inchin reached orbit around New Jeju, on the bridge. Jiwan was manually calculating firing solutions with a pencil and paper. She used old mathematical tables, the kind her grandfather had taught her about. Numbers that never changed, regardless of technology. Enemy bioships entering range, she reported. 6 contacts. They're moving toward the colony. Load armor-piercing shells, Doyan ordered. Target the lead ship. Deep in the ship's belly, crew members manually loaded massive shells into the railgun chambers. These were simple weapons, really. Magnets accelerated a metal projectile to tremendous speed. The magnets ran on a chemical battery system, not complex power grids. It was crude, but it worked. Guns ready. Jiwan called, fire. The Inchin shuddered as the railgun fired. A slug of depleted uranium shot through space at incredible velocity. It crossed the distance in seconds and punched through the bioship's carapace like paper. The creature convulsed and died, tumbling out of orbit. Direct hit. Jiwan allowed herself a small smile. Reloading. On the surface of New Jeju, Governor Sunbak had opened the colony's emergency armory. What she found there gave her hope. Crates of rifles, boxes of ammunition, grenades, even some old-fashioned combat knives. All made by human manufacturers. All maintained despite alien council members calling them a waste of space. Not a waste now, the colonists gathered in the main square. Humans, yes, but also Kresh, Lumaran, and a dozen other species who had made New Jeju their home. They looked terrified. Their advanced weapons were dead. Their security systems were offline. The void swarm was coming. Sunbak stood on a platform holding a rifle. Listen to me, she shouted. We have weapons. They're old human weapons, but they work. We will defend this colony. She saw doubt in many faces. A tall Kresh warrior raised his hand. Governor, I do not know how to use such primitive tools. Then you'll learn fast, a voice said from the crowd. Private Hyunwoo Lee stepped forward. He was a young human soldier who had been conducting training exercises on the planet. I can teach you? It's not complicated. Another soldier appeared, Corporal Narration, a hand-to-hand combat instructor. She was small but moved with deadly grace. I'll teach melee combat. If they get close, you'll need more than guns. Sunbok began distributing weapons. She showed a Lamaran colonist how to hold a rifle, where the safety was, how to aim. The crystalline being's hands shook, but he nodded understanding. Hyen Wu gathered a group of Kresh warriors. This is a magazine, he explained, holding up the metal box. It holds 30 rounds. When it's empty, you press this button and it drops out. Then you insert a new one. Like this, he demonstrated. The Kresh watched carefully, their golden eyes intense. Nari was teaching a group how to attach bayonets to their rifles. If you run out of bullets, this becomes a spear, she said. Like your ancestors used. The enemy bleeds. The blade cuts. Simple as that. The perimeter alarms grew louder. The mechanical sirens wailed. Through binoculars, Sunbok could see the void swarm approaching. They looked like massive insects, each one the size of a ground vehicle. Their carapaces gleamed black. They moved fast. Positions! Sunbok shouted. Everyone to the walls. The colonists rushed to defensive positions. They crouched behind barricades with their rifles. Some looked confident. Many looked terrified. But all of them stayed in orbit. Velthes had managed to get his crew into a shuttle. The small craft had basic chemical thrusters that still worked. They were descending toward New Jeju, not because it was safe, but because drifting in space meant slow death. There are thousands of them, his pilot said, staring at the swarm below. The colony will fall. No, Chishra said softly. She pointed at the Incheon, still in orbit, still firing. The humans are fighting. And look, the colonists are forming defensive lines. Velthes saw it. Tiny figures on the walls. Flashes of gunfire. Simple chemical explosions. But the void swarm creatures were falling. Not all of them, but enough. Those are projectile weapons, Velthes said in wonder. They're fighting with bullets and blades. Because those work, Chishra said. Just like Captain Park said. The shuttle landed hard in the colony's spaceport. The void swarm hit the colony's outer perimeter like a living wave. Thousands of biomechanical creatures rushed forward, their chitinous legs churning the ground. Their bodies were covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb light. Multiple eyes glowed red in their heads. They made no sound except the clicking of their limbs. Sergeant Yoonji Kim stood on the wall, rifle pressed to her shoulder. She had been a soldier for 12 years. She had fought in border conflicts and anti-piracy operations. But she had never seen anything like this. Hold your fire, she shouted to the defenders around her. Humans, Kresh, Lumaran, and others gripped their rifles with white knuckles. Let them get closer. Wait for my command. The swarm rushed closer. 200 meters. 150. 100, fire. The wall erupted in flame and thunder. Dozens of rifles spoke at once. The crack of gunfire was deafening. Brass shell casings flew through the air, tinkling as they hit the ground. The smell of gunpowder filled the air. Sharp and acrid swarm creatures fell. Their armor cracked under the impact of bullets. Green blood sprayed. But more came behind them, climbing over their dead. Yoonji fired in controlled bursts. 3 shots, pause, 3 shots. Each burst hit a different target. Headshots when possible. Center mass when not. She had taught this. Now she demonstrated it. Beside her, a Lamaran colonist named Vess was struggling. Her crystalline hands couldn't quite manage the recoil. The rifle kicked up after each shot, spoiling her aim. Lean into it, Yoonji said calmly, even as chaos raged around them. Don't fight the recoil. Let it hit your shoulder, then bring the barrel back down. Like this, she fired 3 more shots. 3 more swarm creatures fell. Vess tried again. This time her shots found their targets. The crystalline being's voice rang with surprise. It worked. Keep shooting, Yunji said. On the ground level, Private Hyunwoo Lee commanded a group of defenders at the main gate. The gate was closed, but it wouldn't hold forever. The swarm was already trying to tear through it. Metal groaned under their assault. Grenades ready, Hyunwoo called. He held one in his hand, a simple metal cylinder with a pin. Technology that hadn't changed in centuries. When that gate breaks, we throw together. Understand? The defenders nodded. They held their grenades, fingers on the pins. They were scared. Hyunwoo could see it in their eyes. A Kresh warrior's scales had gone pale. A human farmer's hands shook. Hey, Hyunwoo said. Look at me. They looked. We're going to be fine. You know why? Because we have something they don't. What? The Kresh warrior asked. We're fighting for our homes. They're just hungry. Hyunwoo smiled. And we have explosives. The gate buckled. Metal tore. A gap appeared. Swarm creatures pushed through, their bodies writhing. Now! Hyunwoo pulled his pin and threw. 6 grenades arced through the air. They disappeared into the mass of creatures. The explosions came as one thunderous roar. Shrapnel tore through chitin and flesh. The shock wave threw bodies backward. The creatures in the gap were simply gone, replaced by smoke and pieces. Close it up, Hyunwoo shouted. Reinforcements. Move those barriers. Colonists rushed forward with metal barriers, the kind used for crowd control. They dragged them across the gap, creating a new barricade. It wasn't pretty, but it would slow the swarm down. At the eastern wall, Corporal Narration was teaching brutal lessons. The swarm had breached there, climbing over the wall faster than defenders could shoot them. It had come down to close combat. Nari moved like water, flowing around a swarm creature's strike. Her bayonet flashed. She drove it into the gap between the creature's head and thorax. It died instantly. She pulled the blade free and spun, taking down another. A young human colonist screamed as a creature lunged at him. He tried to shoot, but his rifle clicked empty. He froze. Use the blade. Nari shouted. It's on your rifle? The colonist looked down at the bayonet attached to his gun. Understanding dawned. When the creature lunged again, he thrust forward with all his strength. The blade punched through the creature's eye. It shrieked and fell. Good. Nari called to him. Again. Don't stop moving. She fought alongside a Kresh warrior who wielded his rifle like a club. His strength was incredible. Each swing crushed carapace and broke limbs. But he was taking hits. His scales were cracked and bleeding. Fall back, Nari ordered him. Get to medical. No, the Kresh roared. I can still fight. Nari respected that. Then stay close to me. We fight together. They formed a line. Nari with her blade, the Kresh with his strength, and 3 other colonists with fixed bayonets. When swarm creatures came over the wall, they met steel and fury. Governor Sumbak Yoon moved through the colony with a rifle in her hands and determination on her face. She was 70 years old. She had survived wars, famines, and the hard years of colony building. She would not let her home fall. She found a group of civilians hiding in a warehouse. Families with children? Elderly people. They looked at her with terrified eyes. Why are you here? She demanded. We can't fight, an elderly Lumoran said. We have no weapons. We don't know how. Sumbak opened a crate beside the door. Inside were hunting rifles. Simple bolt-action weapons. She had stored them here months ago over the protests of those who thought guns had no place in a civilian zone. These are hunting rifles, she said, handing them out. If you've hunted, you can use these. If you haven't, I'll teach you right now. A human man took one carefully. Governor, I hunted deer on Earth, but those things out there are flesh and blood, Sumbak interrupted. They can be killed. We will kill them. Now come. The wall needs more shooters. She led them out. On the way, she passed a makeshift medical station. Wounded defenders lay on tables. Human doctors and alien medics worked side by side, using manual tools and chemical antiseptics. High-tech medical scanners were useless, but needles, thread, and antiseptics still worked on the Western approach. Inspector Velfas discovered what war really meant. He crouched behind a barricade, his scaled hands gripping the rifle Yunji had given him. His claws didn't fit the trigger well. The weapon was designed for human hands, but he made it work. A swarm creature appeared in front of him. It moved fast, legs a blur. Velfas pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. His claw couldn't squeeze hard enough. "The safety!" someone shouted. Chishra was beside him. Her crystalline form was cracked in several places from near misses. "You forgot the safety." Velfas fumbled with the small lever. It clicked. He raised the rifle as the creature lunged. He pulled the trigger. The rifle bucked. The bullet caught the creature in its torso. It stumbled but kept coming. Again. Chishra yelled. Velfas fired. Again. The third bullet hit something vital. The creature collapsed, twitching, then still. He stared at it. His hands shook. He had killed it. With a bullet. A simple piece of metal propelled by exploding powder. It was crude, barbaric, and it had worked. "Reload," a human soldier called out. "Drop the magazine, insert a new one." Velfas watched others reloading. He tried to copy them. His claws made it awkward, but he managed. The empty magazine fell out. He grabbed a new one from a pouch someone had given him. He slid it into the rifle. It clicked. "I did it," he said in wonder. "Good." The soldier called, "Now keep shooting." The battle raged for hours. The swarm kept coming, but the defenders learned quickly. Fear turned to determination. Panic turned to grim resolve. They learned to conserve ammunition. They learned to aim for weak points. They learned to work together. Haiyan-Wu organized teams that rotated from the wall. "First team, pull back and reload. Second team, take the line." It worked. Exhausted defenders fell back to rest while fresh ones took their place. It wasn't perfect, but it kept the defense from collapsing. Yunji moved along the wall, correcting aim, offering advice. Short bursts. "Don't waste ammo. Pick your targets." Her voice was hoarse from shouting, but she never stopped. A young Kresh soldier was crying, his weapon empty. "I can't do this," he sobbed. "I'm going to die here." Yunji knelt beside him. "Look at me," she said. He looked. "You're not going to die." "You know why?" "Because I'm not going to let you." "Now reload your weapon." "One bullet at a time. Just like I showed you." He nodded. His claws shook as he reloaded. But he did it. And when he was done, he returned to the wall. Night fell. The battle continued by moonlight and chemical flares. The light cast eerie shadows. The swarm looked even more monstrous in the flickering glow. But they were dying. Slowly, the tide was turning. Nari looked at the pile of bodies in front of her position. Dozens of swarm creatures lay dead. Her bayonet was bent from use. Her arms ached. But she was still standing. "How many bullets do we have left?" she asked. A colonist checked. "Maybe 20% of our starting supply." "Then we make every shot count," Nari said. "And if we run out, we have blades." In the command center, Sunbok received reports. Casualties were mounting. They had lost 50 defenders. Hundreds were wounded. But the walls still stood. The swarm's assault was weakening. "They're falling back," a scout reported. "The swarm is retreating." Sunbok didn't allow herself to hope yet. "How many are left?" "Hard to say. Maybe 1,000. They're regrouping to the north." "They'll attack again," Sunbok said grimly. "We need more ammunition." "And reinforcements." As if in answer, her radio crackled. "New Jeju, this is the Inchin. We're still in orbit. We've been providing fire support where we can. Captain Park sends his regards." Deep underground in his shielded laboratory, Dr. Minho Choi worked by candlelight. The electromagnetic storm still raged above, but down here, protected by layers of rock and lead, some equipment still functioned. Old equipment. Simple equipment. He studied the data from mechanical sensors, the kind that recorded on paper rolls using needle scratches. The solar storm was massive, but it wasn't infinite. His calculations showed a pattern. The interference would begin to weaken. Not everywhere at once, but in waves. He needed to get this information out. But how? Communications were dead except for the most basic systems. Then he remembered something from his childhood. An old science museum. A demonstration of Morse code using laser pointers. Minho grabbed a battery-powered laser pointer from a drawer. He rigged it to a mechanical timer. Then he started encoding his message in Morse code. Long flashes for dashes, short flashes for dots. He aimed it at the ceiling, where it would reflect off a satellite mirror that required no power to work. The message was simple. Storm weakening. 6-hour window begins at 0600 hours. Advanced systems will partially restore. Prepare for a counteroffensive. He sent it again and again, hoping someone would see it. Someone did on the Inchin. Lieutenant Jiwan Han was on duty in the observation bay. She was exhausted, having calculated firing solutions by hand for hours. She was staring out the viewport when she saw something. A flashing light from the planet's surface, regular, patterned. That's Morse code, she whispered. She grabbed paper and started translating. Dash, 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 dot, dot, dash, dash. The universal distress signal. Then more letters. A message. She ran to the bridge. Captain. Message from the surface. Dr. Choi says the storm is weakening. We'll have a 6-hour window starting at 0600 hours. Captain Do-Yun Park looked at the chronometer. 600 was in 4 hours. 6 hours to do what? To use our advanced weapons, Jiwan said. To coordinate a real counteroffensive. Do-Yun's tired face showed a grim smile. Then we prepare. Get me the fleet. Any ship that can receive laser Morse code. Tell them to be ready. The message spread slowly but surely. Ship to ship. Station to station. Ground forces to orbital units. Humanity's communication network, reduced to lights and mirrors and code from centuries past, carried the most important message of the war. On New Jeju, Governor Sunbak received the message by courier. A scout who had seen the laser signals and translated them. She gathered her officers in the command center, which was lit by chemical glow sticks. We have 6 hours once power returns, she told them. The swarm won't know our systems are coming back online. We can catch them off guard. Sergeant Yoonji Kim studied a paper map of the region. The swarm had retreated to the northern valleys, about 30 kilometers away. If we can get vehicles working, we can reach them before they scatter. Big if, Corporal Narration said. Most of our vehicles are completely dead. Fried circuits. Not all of them, Yan Wuli said. He had been talking to the colony's mechanics. The old diesel trucks in the emergency garage? They have no computers. Mechanical fuel injection. They should start right up once the electromagnetic interference clears. Sunbak nodded. Then we prepare a mobile force. Everyone who can fight. We're going to take this battle to them. In space, something else was happening. Human ships were the only ones moving, the only ones capable of fighting. But there were so many dead ships. Ships from dozens of species, drifting helplessly. Thousands of people trapped inside. Do-Yun made a decision. We share our weapons. His officers looked surprised. Sir? Jiwan asked. We can't crew every ship, Do-Yun said. But we can give them weapons. We have spare rifles. Spare ammunition. We drop packages to every disabled ship. Tell them to prepare. When power returns, they move to preset coordinates. We coordinate a unified strike. It was an enormous undertaking. But the Inchin's crew worked through the night. They loaded weapons into cargo pods. They attached simple chemical thrusters to them. They programmed basic timers that would send the pods to specific coordinates. Each pod contained 50 rifles, 10,000 rounds of ammunition, grenades, and detailed paper instructions on how to use them. The instructions were written in 20 different languages, Velthas watched from a viewport as the pods launched. Hundreds of them spreading across local space like seeds. "He's arming everyone," the inspector said quietly. "Yes," Chishra replied. "Humans arm their friends. It's their way." "We are not their friends," Velthas said. "I wrote a report condemning them." "Perhaps," Chishra said. "But Captain Park is giving us the tools to survive anyway." "That's what humans do." The pods reached disabled ships. Crews found them, opened them, stared in wonder at the contents. Rifles, old-fashioned, simple, reliable rifles, ammunition, grenades, instructions. A Kresh captain on a dead battleship read the instructions carefully. He had never held a rifle before. Now he distributed them to his crew. They practiced loading and unloading. The mechanisms were simple. Even without training, they could figure it out. On a Lumaran science vessel, the crew was skeptical. "These weapons are thousands of years old," one scientist said. "So are wheels," the captain replied. "And wheels still work. Load them. When power returns, we fight." The time passed slowly. Defenders on New Jeju rested as best they could. They cleaned weapons. They counted ammunition. They wrote messages to loved ones on paper, just in case they didn't survive the next battle. Yunji gathered her best shooters. About 50 humans and aliens who had proven themselves in the first battle. "We're the tip of the spear," she told them. "When the trucks start, we move fast. We hit them hard. We don't give them time to react." A Kresh warrior raised his hand. "Sergeant, I cannot fit in a human truck easily." Yunji smiled. "Then you ride on top. Hold on tight." At 0600 hours exactly, the electromagnetic storm began to weaken. It didn't disappear, but it lessened. Power systems flickered to life. Lights came on. Computers booted up slowly, their systems damaged but functional. On the Inshin, Yuan shouted with joy as her tactical display came online. "We have sensors. We have plasma weapons. Target the swarm concentrations," Doyan ordered. "Full barrage. Everything we have." The Inshin's plasma cannons charged and fired. Bolts of superheated energy lanced down from orbit. They hit the swarm positions with devastating effect. Explosions bloomed. Hundreds of creatures died in seconds, but the plasma weapons could only fire a few shots. Before the electromagnetic interference spiked again, the systems died once more. It didn't matter. They had done enough. On the surface, the diesel trucks roared to life. The sound of old-fashioned combustion engines was beautiful to those who heard it. 50 defenders piled into 5 trucks. Yunji rode in the lead vehicle, standing in the truck bed with her rifle ready. "Go!" Governor Sunbok ordered. "Hit them hard?" The trucks charged forward, bouncing over rough terrain. They had no guidance systems, no computer-aided navigation. The drivers used paper maps in their eyes. It was crude but effective. They reached the swarm position in 20 minutes. The creatures were disorganized, still reeling from the orbital bombardment. They hadn't expected a ground assault. "Dismount!" Yunji shouted. "Form a line. Fire at will." The defenders jumped from the trucks and immediately opened fire. Controlled bursts. Aimed shots. The swarm tried to respond, but they were confused. Their coordination was broken. Hyunwoo led a flanking team around the left side. They used grenades to devastating effect, throwing them into clusters of creatures. Nari led another team on the right, moving fast and using the terrain for cover. It was brutal work. Close-range fighting. But the defenders had learned. They had adapted. They were no longer afraid. In space, the temporary restoration of power allowed human ships to coordinate. Doyan had prepared for this moment. Using the brief windows when communications worked, he had transmitted a simple plan to all ships. When the signal came, every ship with working weapons opened fire simultaneously. Plasma, particle beams, missiles, and good old-fashioned railgun slugs all hit the swarm's space-based forces. The creatures had been grouping near a disabled space station, preparing to tear it apart. Now they were caught in a crossfire. Ships that had received human weapons packages joined the fight. a crashed battleship that had been dead in space, suddenly came alive with muzzle flashes as its crew fired rifles through open airlocks at boarding swarm creatures. A Lumaran cruiser used chemical rockets to ram a swarm bioship, destroying both vessels but saving a nearby civilian transport. Commander Taijin Ko was piloting one of the few fighters that could still operate. His craft was old, practically ancient. It had been pulled from a museum, but its rotary cannons worked perfectly. He dove into a formation of swarm flyers. His cannons roared. The six-barreled weapons spun and fired thousands of rounds per minute. Tracer rounds lit up space like fireworks. Swarm creatures fell apart under the onslaught. "This is Terran Fighter 7, Taijin called over the radio. "Guns killed just fine, over." Other pilots heard him and laughed. It was a grim humor, born of combat and survival. But it was genuine. The counteroffensive lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of brutal, desperate fighting. But the tide had turned completely. The swarm was breaking. Their coordination was shattered. Their numbers were decimated. On the surface, a Yunji called a ceasefire. The remaining swarm creatures were fleeing. 1 month later, the Galactic Union Council chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from 300 species sat in their designated seats, their faces grave. The solar storm had finally passed completely. Power systems were restored. Communications were back online. And now came the reckoning. Inspector Velfas stood at the central podium. He had requested this audience. Beside him stood the rifle that had saved his life on New Jeju. He had cleaned it, maintained it, and brought it here as evidence. The council speaker, an ancient Lumaran whose crystalline form held the wisdom of centuries, called the session to order. "Inspector Velfas, you have requested to address this council. You may speak." Velfas took a breath. His scales, once smooth and prideful, were marked with scars. He would carry them for life. "Honored council members, 1 month ago I submitted a report condemning human military doctrine. I called their weapons obsolete. I called their redundancy wasteful. I was wrong." Murmurs filled the chamber. Velfas continued. "The solar storm disabled our fleets, our armies, our defenses. Every species in this chamber suffered catastrophic casualties. Every species except one." He paused. "Humanity continued fighting. With weapons we called primitive. With tactics we called backwards. They fought. And they saved us." He picked up the rifle. "This weapon is 10,000 years old in design. It uses chemical propellant to fire a metal projectile. It requires no computer, no power cell, no complex systems. It works in any environment. It works when nothing else does." A Kresh admiral stood. "Inspector, are you suggesting we abandon our advanced weapons?" "No, Admiral," Velfas said. "I'm suggesting we learn from humanity. We keep our advanced weapons, but we also maintain simpler systems, redundancy, backups, tools that work when technology fails." Shishra stepped forward, her crystalline form still showing cracks from battle. "The human doctrine is this: hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. They call it pragmatism. I call it wisdom." The council speaker looked thoughtful. "What are the casualty figures?" An aide read from a report. "Forces equipped only with energy weapons suffered an average of 73% casualties. Forces equipped with human backup weapons suffered an average of 31% casualties. Colonies that had received human emergency armament packages had a survival rate 42% higher than those that did not." The numbers spoke clearly. The silence in the chamber was heavy. "I propose," Velfas said, "that this council formally adopt the Terran doctrine. Every military installation must maintain kinetic backup weapons. Every soldier must receive training in their use. Every defense plan must include contingencies for technology failure." "Seconded," said a voice from the gallery. It was a Kresh general who had survived the storm aboard a disabled cruiser. He had fought with a human rifle. He understood. The vote was unanimous. On Earth, in the Terran Defense Museum, workers were installing a new wing. It would be called the Arsenal of Last Resort. Captain Do-Yeon Park walked through it as construction continued. Display cases were being filled with the weapons that had saved the galaxy. Governor Soonbak Yoon walked beside him. She had traveled to Earth for the memorial ceremonies. "Strange," she said, "to see these things in a museum. A month ago they were saving lives." "They're still saving lives," Do-Yeon replied. "Every species is ordering them now. Our factories are working overtime. We're training instructors from 40 different worlds." They stopped at a display showing a simple rifle, the same model that had armed New Jeju's defenders. The plaque read, "When technology failed, these did not." Soonbak touched the glass. "We lost 117 defenders on New Jeju. I know their names. Their families." "Every one. I'm sorry," Do-Yeon said. "Don't be," Soonbak replied. "We fought. We survived. Their sacrifice meant something." She turned to him. "How many worlds did we save by sharing our weapons?" "Current count is 63 worlds, 218 ships, and approximately 4 million individuals." Soonbak nodded slowly. "Then we did good. Their deaths purchased something valuable." In the training facilities of New Jeju, now fully rebuilt, Sergeant Yoonji Kim stood before a class of new recruits. They were mixed species. Humans, Kresh, Lumaran, and others. They all wore the same uniform now. The uniform of the Terran Defense Training Corps. "This is a rifle," Yoonji said, holding one up. "It's old technology, but you will learn to love it. You will learn to respect it. Because one day it might be all that stands between you and death." The recruits listened carefully. Some of them had been on New Jeju during the battle. They had seen what these weapons could do. The others had heard the stories. "The rifle is a tool," Yoonji continued, "like a hammer or a knife. It has no morality. It's neither good nor evil. What matters is the person holding it." She made eye contact with each recruit. "You will learn discipline. You will learn responsibility. You will learn that every trigger pull is a decision with consequences." A young Kresh recruit raised his hand. "Sergeant, how long will these weapons remain relevant?" Yoonji smiled slightly. "Cadet, bullets don't care about technological advancement. Physics doesn't change. Force equals mass times acceleration. That was true 10,000 years ago. It will be true 10,000 years from now." She paused. "These weapons will be relevant as long as there's something that needs to be stopped." After class, Corporal Narration joined Yoonji. They watched the recruits practicing on the range. "They're learning fast," Nari observed. "They're motivated," Yoonji replied. "They know these skills matter." "Do you think we'll face another storm?" Nari asked. "I hope not," Yoonji said. "But now we're ready if we do." In space, the Incheon underwent repairs at an orbital shipyard. Lieutenant Juwon Han supervised the work on the weapon systems. They were upgrading the plasma cannons, but they were also expanding the ballistic weapon systems. More railguns, more missile tubes, more redundancy. Commander Taijin Ko joined her, floating in zero gravity. "How's it coming?" "Good," Juwon said. "We're going to be the most heavily armed ship in the fleet. Advanced weapons and conventional weapons working together. The way it should be," Taijin said. He looked out at the stars. "You know, I flew museum pieces during the battle. Fighters that were 200 years old. And they performed beautifully." "Simple machines are reliable machines," Juwon agreed. "I'm keeping mine," Taijin said. "The brass wanted to put it back in the museum. I told them it's still combat ready. I'm going to fly it on patrol." Juwon laughed. "A museum piece as your primary fighter? Why not?" Taijin grinned. "It saved my life. It killed swarm flyers. It proved itself. That makes it worthy." In his laboratory, Dr. Minho Choi was studying the solar storm's aftermath. The data was valuable. Understanding what had happened might help prevent it from happening again. Or at least give better warning. A visitor arrived. It was Velthas. The inspector looked different now, humbler, scarred, changed. "Dr. Choi," Velthas said. "I came to apologize." Minho looked surprised. For what? The Science Council ignored your warnings. I was part of that decision. If we had listened, we could have prepared better. Fewer would have died. Minho was quiet for a moment. Inspector, I don't want your apology. I want your help. I'm writing new protocols for stellar monitoring. I need the Council's support to implement them. You have it, Velthus said immediately. Whatever you need. The Council has learned its lesson. They worked together for several hours, developing plans for early warning systems. Simple systems that would work even during electromagnetic storms. Mechanical sensors, visual observation networks. Backup communications using light and mirrors. We're reinventing old technology, Minho said with a slight smile. The old ways work, Velthus replied. Humanity taught us that. Private Hyunwoo Lee returned to his homeworld on leave. His family greeted him with joy and tears. His mother held him tight, not wanting to let go. I heard what happened, she said. I heard you fought monsters. I did, Hyunwoo said. But I also fought alongside good people. Humans and aliens together. His younger brother looked at him with wide eyes. Are you a hero? Hyunwoo knelt down to the boy's level. No, I'm a soldier who did his job. The heroes are the ones who didn't come back. That evening, his village held a gathering. They wanted to hear his stories. Hyunwoo told them about the battle, about Governor Sunbok's courage, about Sergeant Yoonji's leadership, about fighting alongside Kresh and Lumaran defenders. What did you learn? An elder asked. Hyunwoo thought carefully. I learned that old tools are still good tools. I learned that simple things are often the most reliable, and I learned that we're stronger together than apart. The village listened. They understood that on New Jeju, a memorial grove was planted. Each tree represented a fallen defender. Plaques bore their names and species. Humans, Kresh, Lumaran, and others. They had died defending a frontier colony. Now they would be remembered forever. Governor Sunbok walked among the trees with Captain Do-yeon. They moved slowly, reading each name. Do you think it will happen again? Sunbok asked. Another storm? Maybe, Do-yeon said. Another threat? Certainly. The universe is dangerous, but we're ready now. Yes, Do-yeon agreed. We're ready. They reached the center of the grove. A large stone monument stood there. Carved into it were simple words. They fought with courage. They defended with honor. They saved us all.